Possession crucial from this. How much longer will the referee allow? Dublin lead by a point, and there's the whistle. It's over. It's over.
We earned it by winning the last 2 matches on the road, and that's not going to be taken away from us.
But what I love in hurling, I love players that will never give in.
He hits it. It's over the bar. Oh, holy Moses.
Hello, welcome to the RTÉ GAA Podcast. Mikey Stafford here, joined by Pat Spillane, Rory O'Neill and Niall McCoy, who are back on the weekend. How are we, lads?
Very good, Mikey.
Good stuff. I'm going to rename it Mikey Stafford's RTÉ GAA Podcast for Sage Football Pundit Mikey Stafford lets a couple of pundits on.
Some call now to go for Derry when they had to go through Monaghan, Donegal and Tyrone to win an Ulster title. That is some call.
Yeah, shame I didn't put any money on it. I still have Galway for the All-Ireland as well, so if the two come in now... I mean, Pat also backed Derry, but I don't think Pat backed Derry to win the Ulster title before the Ulster Championship started. So I have one up on you, I'd say, Pat.
Probably not, but I swear to God, my tipping record this year is actually very, very good. It's the best, I'd say, since I've ever joined RT or joined the Sunday World. I think this is the best run I've ever had. So I like Derry. I fancied Derry yesterday because I just thought there's something about them this year. There's energy, there's athleticism, there's physicality. And there's that want, there's that desire. And, people talk about hunger. Sure, geez, everyone is hungry. But some people wanted that little bit more. And I just like Derry. Yeah. Look, I'm still looking out the window here, or Mikey, and I can see the smoke still from all the bonfires around the crossroads of Kerry celebrating our 81st Munster title.
83, Pat.
83rd, Pat. You wanted us to correct you.
What a weekend of celebration.
I know. Has a 23-point victory ever been as sweet?
I don't. You don't. You don't know whether to laugh or cry. I mean, and you don't want to patronise Limerick at the same time. But look, it was, like I said, it was men against boys. They were completely out of their depth, outclassed. We can have arguments about provincial championships, should they be. But, bear in mind that this team, Limerick, will be in Division 2 next year. The team who won in Ulster will be in Division 2 with Limerick next year. And the two teams who contested the Leinster Championship final will be in Division 2 next year. So I'm not too sure. This is Kerry were very good at times, and they were so at times. And Jack, again, like the Cork match, Jack will have a lot to work on, and that's good. Even though a 23-point victory, you say, yeah, that's great. Thought the first quarter of an hour, the first quarter of an hour when Limerick set up that blanket, and Kerry struggled with that blanket. The only reason why Kerry, from then on, because Limerick couldn't maintain that tempo, that pace, that work rate, whatever like that. And the longer the game went on, look, first of all, they abandoned the blanket and they tried to half chase a game. The space opened up and game all over. So that first quarter, the Derrys, the Donegals, the Mayos, or whoever will be facing in a quarter-final will take a lot of heart and say, this Kerry team, they can be got at. There's also the failing, and I know Gooch highlighted again last night, but this goal-scoring threat, I'm disappointed. They should be rattling more goals. They're not even creating goal chances, but they certainly should be converting more.
Pat, they are creating goal chances, but they're taking the cop-out fisted over the bar from 14 yards option every time.
That was against Limerick, yeah, no doubt about that. In actual fact, against Cork, they actually only created one goal-scoring chance against Cork, just one, believe it or not. But look, it's I don't know. I don't know whether to laugh or cry after the weekend. I don't know whether we should be celebrating, 11 championship matches, 22 teams playing, the full houses in Salt Hill, the full house in Clonus. I don't know. I just. It was such an underwhelming weekend because Saturday was non-event and Sunday's game in Connacht was enjoyable. I don't think it was that high a standard, but it was an enjoyable contest. Galway still have a lot of improvement to do. But then the Ulster final, to be quite honest, I swear to God, lads, I did something that I never happened before, that I actually recorded extra time and said, you know what? I'm going to watch it later on because I felt, you know what? I'm after losing an hour and a half of my life that I was never going to get back. And I actually recorded and listened to it on the radio. I said, I'll watch it later on tonight because I'll tell you this, I knew nothing was going to change. It was going to be same old. And look, I'm not Spillane preaching about the games were better years ago. They weren't. The players are more skillful now. They're fitter nowadays, and in general, the games are of a high quality. But this was dire, safety first football, and you say evolution. And I know this word evolution. It's all about evolution, and games must be evolving. But sometimes some fella will have to ask, with evolution, are things improving? Are things getting better? And you have to say, when you look at the likes of the Ulster final yesterday, and look, if Kerry win and all Ireland playing, that's not the football. We wouldn't give a tuppenny in Kerry. Not exactly. A tuppenny. And Derry people won't give it. But it was, for the neutral, it was a hard watch.
Okay, I'm neutral, Niall, except for the fact that, my punditry reputation was staked on Derry here. But apart from that, I actually quite enjoyed it, I personally. And Niall, I'm going to you because you're the Ulster man, so I'm hoping you're going to agree with me.
I want to defend our Ulster brethren here. The word I had used, which Pat will probably not appreciate, was intriguing.
Hold it. No,
Pat loves that one. Pat loves that one.
My BS, I have a BS monitor that I have always on when I talk to you. I have a BS monitor, and it has just gone through the roof. It has hit the Richter scale. It's gone off the Richter scale. And all I'm waiting for, what was the word you used again now? Give me that word.
Intriguing.
Intriguing.
And I'm waiting for the next two words. It's enthralling. And the last
fascinating.
You know what came yesterday? Fascinating, yeah. Oh my God, don't get me started.
Niall, throw in chess match and you might have the whole job done.
If you look at the finals, like 83rd Munster title, we'll be here in 2039 asking how are Limerick and Clare going to get close to as Kerry rack up their 100th Munster title. But if you go up north, until the last seconds, we didn't know who won the match. Now, there was a lot of yes, it was awful. The first 10 minutes was probably the worst 10 minutes of Ulster football I've ever seen in my life. But give me that over Dublin winning in Leinster. Give me that over Kerry winning the Munster. There was something to keep you there. It was a close match. It was two match teams. Yes, listen, they protected the ball. But anyone expecting anything different from Donegal and Rory Galway's Derry, it's not going to happen.
Excuse me, can I just recall, and I know Limerick were humiliated at 23 points in these ones. I just can recall a National Football League semi-final 2 years ago, the Division 3 semi-final between guess who? Limerick and Derry. And you know what happened? Derry stumbled over the line, beating Limerick.
And now they're Ulster champions.
Yeah.
Rory, is there a case here of, styles make fights, and these two teams are never going to produce a classic? But I'm always intrigued. I'm already intrigued if things do go according to seeding, shall we say, in the quarterfinals. Galway against Derry would be a very, very interesting All-Ireland semi-final.
It would if that's how it pans out. I think this particular brand of football Derry are playing has a short shelf life. I think this particular brand that they're playing was rumbled about 4 or 5 years ago. We first saw it 10 years ago. That's the only disappointing aspect for me to a certain extent. There was two things that struck me about the game yesterday. Was obviously we have now disappeared back into a 2012 vortex of shite. And we'll have copycat coaches up and down the country, again, seeing that this type of football can win championships. I think that doesn't sit well with me. The second thing was, there's about 4 or 5 minutes to go. I never, ever saw this before. In all my time watching Gaelic football, I never saw two teams effectively settle for extra time. I couldn't believe it. It was absolutely extraordinary. This was like that time Ireland played Holland in the World Cup, where the two teams have effectively know that, it was almost as if there was an agreement between them. Sure, look, we need for another 20 minutes here, lads. It was bizarre now,
It reminded me, do you know the way the last game of a county league game and the two teams either need a draw or one team doesn't give it up. But I remember it was a friend of mine was reffing a game in South Kerry, Division 1 National League or a county league game. And with about 7 or 8 minutes to go, the captain of one of the teams said, look, ref, we both need a draw here and we've decided it's going to be a draw. So is that all right? He said, and the ref wasn't too happy. And do you know what he did? He played 10 minutes of extra time. 10 minutes. So for 15 minutes, They just passed the ball around with each other in a circle. And there was a bit of that. I wouldn't be, Rory, as critical as Derry. I swear to God, I mean, I watched Derry against Tyrone, and I've watched Derry in a few of the league games, the Galway game accepted. But I like their style of football.
They have some fantastic players, Pat. They have some brilliant footballers.
Yeah, they have the blanket defence, and yes, they bring the bodies back, but their transitioning is very quick, and most of the time, yes, they were so different, because when one team sets up, that's a mirror image of the other. That's what you're going to get a statement. But normally they transition quick, and they always have 3 players in front of the ball. I thought, I mean, if the culprits yesterday were Donegal, because they were like an old heavyweight boxer, that has been on the go for years, and is still plugging away, throwing a few old punches, but with the same old game plan and the same old formula. But he's now doing it at about 30% of the energy that he had. And just Donegal are a one-trick pony. They were very good when they burst on the scene with this high-tempo running game. That high-tempo running game is no longer. And I've seen them during the league, and I saw them again yesterday. When they play this slow, laborious, lateral, ponderous pass, they're no threat to anyone. And they were a huge disappointment. I expected a lot more from Donegal. And certainly there will be question marks. If they don't really have a run to a semi-final or final, there'll certainly be question marks of whether Bonner and Rochford will. I think that if ever there's a county that need a change of management and a change of style and a freshness, I think it's Donegal. It's one of them anyway.
Yeah. Rory's right there about the declare in the final moments. Donegal were the worst of that. Like with a minute to go,
I would agree.
They didn't even try to go over the halfway line in that final minute where they could have won an Ulster title. That for me.
But did you ever see that before, Niall, in a championship match where that's on the line? Where effectively two teams say, do you know what? We're happy here to play another time.
I think it was one team, Rory. I don't think Derry could have come out into Donegal's half to try and get the ball back. I think they could have got sucked out and then they'd be in trouble. Donegal had the ball. It was in their, literally the ball was in their court to do something, and they decided not to.
The stat from yesterday's game says it all. I mean, in the safety first and fear, there was only 2 points scored in yesterday's game from turnovers. So basically what happened was they actually didn't go near the opposition at all. They just recycled, went backwards and didn't engage the opposition at all. There was no... Actually, what was interesting about... I look at the teams yesterday and there's one thing that stands out. Pace. Galway had the pace over Roscommon. Obviously, Dublin had the pace over Kildare. Kerry had pace, energy over it. And definitely Derry have that pace and athleticism. But you know what I like? I like about this man marking. Do you know? I looked at Brendan Rodgers yesterday, man marking Michael Murphy. Or I looked at Kieran Malloy marking Enda Smith. And instead of Rodgers doing a man-marking job and following Murphy over, instead of Malloy following Smith, they played the game on their terms and made Michael Murphy, instead of Brendan Rodgers shadowing and focusing on, he played the game on his terms. He ran, and poor old Michael Murphy hadn't energy. And it was the same with Kieran Malloy. Kieran Malloy, instead of defending and doing a man-marking, tagging job on Enda Smith, was attacking, moving, and playing the game on their terms. And I like that.
Yeah, it was a sensational performance, Rory, wasn't it? Brendan Rodgers side, 3 points from fullback when for half the game you're marking Michael Murphy. It's phenomenal, right or over stuff.
Yeah, he's unreal. I mean, just you'd be delighted for him and delighted for Derry and their support there. That was there yesterday, really early doors. I mean, it was a superb display. I think it was a little. Look, I know a lot of the analysis after the fact now, and there's loads of Monday morning quarterbacks saying, why didn't they play Murphy closer to goal? Why didn't they? What is he now? Is he 34?
And
he's not that old. He's 32, I'd say, is he?
Certainly 32, and a guy of his age with a guy not his age,
with the mileage.
A guy with his mileage on the leg, playing in a hot, humid conditions in Clones, expecting to run box to box, covering that middle third. No, he's not.
Against Cavan, they kicked 2. Now one was a speculative shot.
They moved him in the second half, Rory.
And they scored 2 goals with the ball just dropping into the square. And you've got this man mountain that you could put in there, and they never really did that. It was really disappointing.
We've been talking about that all year.
Trying to get the best out of him at this stage. I always think if you look, Arsene Wenger's book is really interesting in terms of how he manages players. It always, and one particular passage always struck me when he took over. Obviously, Bergkamp was still there. He went to Bergkamp and he said to Bergkamp, look, Dennis, you're not going to play every game from now on. You're only going to play about 20 to 25 games. But if you are happy with your role playing the 20 to 25 games, we'll get another 3 years out of you and you'll have another 3 years playing Premier League elite level football and you'll elongate your career. I think sometimes that particular mindset is lost in the GAA. We kind of see players when they get to the latter stages in their careers and we don't remodel the roles that we give them to try and get the maximum out of them, and we still kind of think they can do the things that they used to do when they were in their early 20s when they patently can't. And as Pat said, like, the conditions were warm yesterday. It was obviously going to favor a sort of a younger, fitter team, and we've spoken before about how fit Derry were, and look, they were they deserved their victory. I would have just liked to have seen them push on and grab the victory as opposed to, fear football, which is kind of what we saw at its worst.
Yeah. No.
The only thing I'd say about Michael Murphy, Donegal are going to be lost with him without the field as well. That's the other thing about it. Like he kicked a couple of bad efforts wide. Yes, you wouldn't expect from him. He could have been coming out of that game from play, and he still is dictating out there. And life after Michael Murphy in Donegal is going to be highly interesting because he's still undoubtedly the most intelligent player on the field. As Pat said there, his engine certainly couldn't have went for 80 minutes, yes, and we saw that when Brendan Rodgers got away from him, who's probably a better hurler than footballer. He's just a magnificent athlete. It's going to be how Donegal plug that hole when Michael.
I wouldn't be surprised. I'll tell you this much, Niall. I would not be one bit surprised if in the next year or two, Michael hangs up the boots and puts on the Bonish Doors bib. Literally one to the other.
Well, he's already. You
could easily see him become a Donegal manager. He just has that presence about him, and I wouldn't be surprised if it happens sooner than we think. Do
you reckon, Pat, is he the GAA's Pep Guardiola?
Well, there was an interesting article on Saturday. I think it was in the Examiner I was reading about, and it was Ronan O'Gara talking about the squad, not the team, but about the squad, and this big. And he quoted Eddie Jones as well, and it was talking about. Do you start your best 15 or do you finish at the finisher's key? And, sometimes, and you look at the likes of Michael Murphy and you wonder maybe, would he be better off being used for the last 20, 25 minutes at the edge of the square? Because you know what? The one thing about Donegal is around the middle of the field, over the last number of years, they have a lot of athleticism, they have a lot of physicality, they have a lot of very pacey players, but they don't seem to be using them. Or maybe, sometimes having a great player, and Michael Murphy is one of the greats. Actually, I won't get into that, and he is a great player.
No, you don't need to, Pat.
I don't need to. That was a bit like that debate yesterday between Cullum and Sean was a bit like deciding which one of your children is your favourite. It was. I soldiered for 35, 40 years behind the bar, and I listened to that debate every night for 45 years. So you have to win in All-Ireland to be a great player. No, you do not. No. Michael Murphy is one of the all-time greats, whether he wins another All-Ireland or not. But I do think that he... do you remember your man Red Adair, the famous American guy that used to go to quench all those fires in oil fields, and he used to be flown all over the world with Red Adair. And Michael Murphy is the Red Adair in Gaelic football, because with Donegal, he's expected to fight fires back in his defence, in the middle of the field, in the full forward line. And unfortunately, he hasn't got the legs for 70 minutes out the field. And I think you have to make it either use him as a finisher, or I think you have to use him. You have to use him at the edge of the square. And I looked at a lot of those goals yesterday in the Talton Cup in particular, and an awful lot of the goals came from
just long ball in,
high ball edge of the square. And people say, I think I saw it was a Philly McMahon or someone like that in his article on the weekend. He was talking about the day of the big target man has gone. The day of the big target man has never gone, because the big target man, you're firing the ball into the danger area, you're firing the ball into where the scoring zone is, and a big man with a reach of 2 or 3 inches above either he'd win the ball, or at worst, it's a break and a chance of a goal. So is there a role for a big man, that big target man in full forward? Of course there is. Yeah. But of course, the reluctance is in coaching, the fear, possession, recycle. Don't take a chance, because if you kick the ball long, maybe you might lose. But maybe you might score a goal as well.
Yeah, chaos is no bad thing in a game of Gaelic football sometimes. Right. Niall, we've done with Donegal there for now, so we really should talk about the victors, to whom the spoils go. Obviously, quarter-final place now. I'm obviously a fan, and I asked you to be a fan too, because I asked you to write a piece about a month ago about how great they were, or more. I don't think they're going to win in All-Ireland, don't worry. I haven't gone that far with it. But at the same time, a team coached by Rory Gallagher, as we've said, they're supremely fit. They're very, very well coached. They have some excellent forwards, some of whom play in the full back line. There's a lot to like here, and a lot that would trouble anyone. And, as I said, going down, it could be in the semi-final with Galway, which I think could be a very interesting game.
Yeah, and a lot of things have come together for Derry over this last couple of years. A lot of school success, Mahara and Mahara Felt, a lot of success at minor and under 20 county level. Then a couple of big things. Conor Glass coming back from the AFL has been huge, and I thought his role, whether you agree with how he plays or not, I thought he carried it out brilliantly. He was just, he played that covering role fantastically well. And then Slotneil know how to win big games. Brendan Rodgers plays for a forward Slotneil. Shane McGuigan for the hurler, Shane McGuigan hurls in defence. They go out and, they do that at county level at the opposite end of the pitch, although they spent as much time at either end. So they have that composure. Christy McCaig's probably the best man marker in Ulster at the moment. So a lot of really good players. Very strong, very fast, very fit. If you were to pick a modern team, what you'd want, whether we like the game or not, they tick so many boxes, speed, pace, and Gallagher has them playing intelligent football. Yeah. Rory mentioned earlier about, they got found out about 4 or 5 years ago playing this football. It's not that much different. What I would say now is they have much higher quality players playing it across the pitch. Rory's had 3 seasons now working on them. I do think Rory is probably a short span manager. I think that sort of football probably does have a short span. Jim McGuinness probably was the same at Donegal with Rory beside him. They got a couple of years at the very, very top. But listen, when he's there, he obviously makes it work, and they'll go into the All-Ireland series, and absolutely no expectation on them in terms of what they're going to get out of the season, because they've got that Ulster title and they can go.
You're right, Niall. Derry do tick the boxes: the pace, the physicality, the athleticism. The only thing is, when I take away, can I take away really anything from the provincial finals? Obviously, you can't take away anything from the Kerry, from the Munster final, the Leinster final. And while we're reading a lot into the Ulster final, to be perfectly honest, I didn't rate Donegal. I think I saw them several times during the league. I think, like I said, this is a Donegal team that are very much in decline. Very, very much in decline. Could I judge? The big thing is, so can you really judge the semi-finals? We're talking about semi-finals, possibly Galway, Derry, or Kerry, Dublin. I really believe we're going to see at least 1, maybe 2 huge banana skins between now and the semi-final, because I do think, first of all, the big problem for the winners, 4-week break. The managers, and they were talking about it, Jack O'Connor and all that, a 2-week break is what managers love. A 4-week break, it's very hard to get it. And last year, Kerry got a 4-week break to the semi-final. Okay, they didn't know when it was, but they weren't ready for it. But so the 4-week break is an issue. That's number 1. Secondly, the teams that are going to be playing in the quarter-final are going to be battle-hardened. They're going to have played two competitive games under their belt, and they'll be ready. So the one, if I'm going to say, somebody, I think it was a Mark O'Shea today that I see, he had Dublin 1, Derry 2, and Kerry 3. No, I wouldn't agree with Mark. But if Derry have a problem, and this is why Derry, are Derry going to win the All-Ireland? No, they're not. And very simply, I'll tell you why they're not going to win there. They just don't have a forward line of the quality that's required to win an All-Ireland. They won't win an All-Ireland. They haven't that top quality forwards. McGuigan is a good forward, but go back to Donegal, go back to when Jimmy and Rory had Donegal. He had McFadden, he had Michael Murphy, he had shooters, he had top quality forwards, and said Derry don't have that top quality forward to deliver an All-Ireland title. That's my belief.
I'd agree. I would agree. I think Shane McGuigan's top quality, but I think he carries a lot of the burden. And interestingly, he wasn't on the ball much in the first half, came in more in the second half, but I would agree and Derry and Galway, I suppose, maybe are the two vulnerable, the banana slips there. They could be coming up against a Mayo, a Tyrone, a Donegal. Like, I certainly wouldn't be placing both them in the semi-final yet. It's look at a draw job from here.
Okay. Let's move on to Galway then, because as Pat said, the games on Sunday were games which helped. Rory, it was, as Pat said, the standard was high, but high-ish. If the Ulster final was cagey and defensive and cautious, and we want to keep the ball, the Connacht final was a little bit more, you have a shot, we have a shot, you have a shot, we have a shot. So the question marks about the Galway defence, which were somewhat answered against Mayo, I don't think they're completely gone away. And I don't think it takes a genius to say if Galway have an Achilles heel, it's their defence, not their attack.
Yeah, no, that's absolutely fair. And that'll probably persist. It's probably why they're sitting a little deeper without the ball, and they've obviously got unbelievable pace in the team, so they can transition quite quickly. I think that the impressive thing from a Galway perspective for me is they played slightly differently yesterday against Roscommon to the way they played against Mayo, and obviously they wouldn't have needed to change their game plan too much against Leitrim, but what they're showing, I think, as a management team is a level of flexibility in their approach around team selection and obviously, positioning of certain players with certain roles. I think they've added a good few strings to their bow in a tactical sense. And I think they're building momentum. I think Galway are one of those teams in football, the longer they stay in the championship, they can become a much more difficult proposition. They'll spend more time training together. I think Pat's point is absolutely fair in that the 4-week gap is an issue. But having said that, I mean, look, it was a tricky enough Connacht title for them to win. They had to beat Mayo and Roscommon in the 1 year. We saw Comer going off with what looked like a serious enough ankle injury. It'll give them some time to get the bodies right. They know with a fair degree of certainty, obviously, know that they are going to be playing on that quarterfinals weekend. So I think they're in a good place. I think there was a really good sense of spirit about the place yesterday. They needed to get silverware on the board. I think that's Pádraig Joyce's first piece as a manager. And I think the way the draw has panned out, obviously with Dublin and Kerry on the other side, I think Galway will certainly feel they have a great chance to make an All-Ireland final at the least.
Yeah. Pat, Galway have the forward line to win an All-Ireland. I think you'd have to agree.
Yeah, their stats yesterday were very impressive. I mean, what was it? 219, 216 from play.
Yeah.
They have Shane Walsh, and Shane has what top quality forwards have. Shane has what David Clifford, what Kieran Kilkenny has, is an X factor. An X factor, a fella that on his day is actually unmarkable. And he's a class act because he's left, right, beautiful balance, lovely jink, lovely sidestep, lovely solo dummy.
But he's still quick.
Oh, he's fast. And like I said, right and left. Now, he was brilliant yesterday. But the one thing I've noticed is that when, Galway play well when their key players are on form. So who are their key players? There's Sean Kelly in the back. There's Conroy at midfield. There's Damien Comer. There's Shane Walsh. They're their big key players. If they're on song, Galway are very good. They were on song yesterday. Probably Conroy didn't.
Conroy was quite, but your man was outstanding. Ulton Harney, Pat. He was probably Roscommon's best player.
Did he sickened Conroy got that point?
He was outstanding. Though it was excellent.
So their forwards are very good. They're very good. They're very good against Roscommon, and they're very good against Leitrim, and they were very good against for spells against Mayo. First quarter, third quarter, brilliant. Second quarter, very poor. Last quarter against Mayo, they nearly got caught. The one thing I was surprised about yesterday, the lads told me Kerry played Roscommon in a challenge a week earlier, and Roscommon gave them a damn good game. And the one thing you always like, you admire Roscommon down through years, because one thing, they're great battlers, they're great warriors, there's great spirit in them. They were lacking that on yesterday. I just felt it, and somebody, they were just not at it yesterday. They weren't at the in-your-face physicality, aggression. Just didn't see. And the other thing yesterday is their forwards. And one of the things about their forwards, the 6 forwards that Roscommon have are really skillful forwards. They're scoring forwards. And like, there's 6 forwards that scored yesterday by the 46th minute, all 6 forwards. But the one thing I thought about their forward play yesterday, that was very much individual efforts. There was no, do you know the way you saw Dublin? There was a direct ball, the movement showing for the ball, the runners coming off the shoulders. Roscommon, everything was slow, was ponderous, was lateral. And there was no work rate from the full forward line. There was no runners coming off the shoulder, or maybe they weren't even inclined to give it to runners. And I mean, the classic example was Enda Smith, who had a goal chance. He should have popped it off. Instead, he took a shot. Ball went wide. So their forward play yesterday, while they have great in it, was very poor. Defensively, they were so. Like, management didn't have a great day at the office. Shane Walsh was on song, nothing to do to curb him. Rob Finnerty was having a field day, nothing to do to curb him. So, Galway were good, yeah. Galway were good. Galway were very good. They were only won by 3 points. They should have won by the final score.
There was a few scores in garbage time there, as the Americans like to call it.
But don't rule out don't disregard garbage time, because garbage time against Mayo was the last 5 minutes, right? And if you can remember, the last 5 minutes against Mayo outscored Galway 5 points to 0. For the last 15 minutes of garbage time yesterday, Roscommon outscored Galway 2-2 to 3 points. So garbage time is okay, but garbage time you can get caught as well.
Yeah.
But they're nice. I like them. Nice footballers.
Well, I was about to ask that, Niall. You would say yesterday it was a nice game of football, and Pat makes the point, like, there was one black card, I think, and there was a couple of pull downs and this and that, but it lacked a bit of blood and thunder that perhaps you would have expected especially from Roscommon coming up against a Galway team that were obviously going to hope for a shootout, I suppose.
Yeah, and there wasn't even many attempts to disrupt that Galway, by hook or by crook, even, just to sort of disrupt it. Like, it was missing. I think you said the word nice there, Mikey, and that probably describes it. And back to Pat's point there about Roscommon and flow and team moves being absent, I thought some of the Galway team scores were absolutely first class. Some of the angles that coming off the runs and all were tremendous. Again, I'm repeating the point here, but it's a litmus test for them when they come up in a couple of weeks. They might face a Tyrone, and if you're facing a Tyrone that's got a couple of wins under their belt, that's when you sort of see Galway's ambitions and where they can go in this championship. Because on paper, again, they're a team that tick so many boxes, particularly in attack, and they're well set up, yes. But when you're in the heat of the battle against a Tyrone, someone who's been there, who can grind you down, that's when you see a team's real All-Ireland credentials.
Yeah, I think that's fair. We'll truck on, lads, because we've still got 2 matches to get through. Admittedly, 2 provincial finals. We won't dwell too long on them, Rory. But the county in which you are a resident, tales of their oblivion have been slightly exaggerated. That was a hell of a first half performance yesterday. It was ruthless. It was like, let's get this match over by half time and let our fans at home switch over to the second half of the rugby, because the second half of the rugby was excellent.
Yeah, no, I didn't see the rugby, but look, they do look like they're back to their sort of flowing best.
They've picked up the pace, haven't they? The ponderous play of last year seems to be gone.
When you've got somebody like Conor Callan on the edge of the square playing as well as he does, and as well as he can do. I mean, we mentioned it earlier. Kicking the ball into the lad in full forward is a handy old tactic to use, believe it or not. It's an old-fashioned one, but maybe sometimes it works when you've got a player of his quality in there. And I mean, look, he just brings a whole new dimension to their play. I think they made ribbons of Wexford and people dismissed it on the basis of quality of opposition. then they went and did something similar to Meath. They've now done it to a team that's supposedly at the same level, technically would be ordinarily if this competition was in a different format. Kildare would probably be in the upper echelons, you would assume. So, I mean, I don't know how many more times they have to go out and absolutely redden a team before people will actually say, hang on a second there, the Dubs are back. And that's what it looks to me anyway, that they are back. And I think there's a few things. Obviously, the insertion of Conor Callaghan back into the side changes the whole dynamic of their play. They're obviously playing slightly more direct. But I actually do believe appointing James McCarthy as captain had a significant effect on the dressing room as well, because his standing within Dublin football and within the game, I think that would have changed the entire mood. I wouldn't be one bit surprised if there is a sense we need to get this fella up the steps of the Hogan stand. He deserves it, you know? So, like, I mean, look, I'm just, as Pat said, you just hope those banana skins doesn't deprive us all of seeing themselves and Kerry take each other on the 9th of July, because, wow, bring that one on.
Pat, I think Kildare thought they were going to a shootout, but they didn't realize they had a spud gun in their holster, I think.
Well, you're damned if you do and you're damned if you don't. We're critical of the Ulster final because the two teams set up so defensively and gave us that sort of match. We were critical of Kildare last year because Kildare came with a game plan against Dublin last year, which was basically a defensive game plan. They didn't have an attacking plan. And they were criticised. And last Saturday, they came with no defensive plan. And they sort of decided, well, we have forwards as well, and we're going to have a shootout, and we can beat the Dubs if it comes to shootout. But I remember, I think it was after the 77 All-Ireland semi-final when Kerry got beaten by Dublin. And I remember Con Hoolan writing something in the evening press on the Monday after. And he was nicely critical in a humorous way of Kerry's failings. But I remember he described one of the forwards as being like a gunfighter going down Main Street for a shootout and discovering he hadn't his gun. And that was a bit like Kildare's forward system. Not alone didn't have the gun, but it's fine even if you have the gun, but they didn't have the bullets to shoot with either. And they never got the possession. But I was at the game yesterday or Saturday, and we were just to watch the Dublin movement, the forward play, was just a joy to behold. But it comes with a caveat that the amount of space that was there was unreal. But, I mean, the two stats, the football was champagne football. I mean, you look at the two first halves they're after producing. Against Meath, they scored with 18. They had 19 shots in the first half, scored with 18, scored 117. Look at the stats from 14 shots at goal. 14 shots at goal they had against Kildare. They scored with 12 of them. They got 5-7 out of 12 shots. That is unbelievable.
In the first half.
With 12 out of 14 shots, they scored 5. But what I loved about it was football as its brilliant bit, the kicking, the movement, the support play, the angles of running, the work rate off the ball. And as a forward, I know you work and you run and you run. And then when you get that yard of space, you need the ball quickly kicked into you. And the Dubs were doing that just. And I talked about it Saturday. And I remember talking about Mick O'Dwyer. And I said, the only piece of advice Mick ever gave us on a football is never look at the O'Neills on the ball. Heads up football, intelligent football, seeing where the opponents are, seeing where the space is, and seeing where your teammates are. And that was heads up, intelligent football. It was beautiful football, but it comes with a caveat that there was so much space and there was so little effort by Kildare in the first half that the caveat is still there. Yes, they've got their mojo back, but will I say because of Saturday's performance, can they win the All-Ireland? I still hold back on that a little bit.
Yeah, they do. Okay. They do lack it. Like they don't have the depth, I think, that they used to have. Certainly, I mean, I think they probably don't have the same caliber of player to call in reserve.
Niall Scully and Johnny Cooper came off the bench.
Still not bad, Still
the rest
not bad.
Of them were unknown.
Yeah. But like, if they did pick up an injury to a key player, that's the only thing that you'd be saying.
Yeah, Niall. Colin Cooper mentioned this on the Sunday game last night about Kerry and the lack of goals, and it is becoming. there is, outside of perhaps that Ulster final, we have seen games, and Derry in previous rounds have been reliant on it. There does seem to be, teams, a lot of teams, and I can see why Gooch is kind of worried about it. A lot of teams seem to be, if there's a chance to score a goal, we're scoring a goal, and it'd be easy to see when it gets to the latter stages of championships, the teams who are practiced at raising green flags are going to have an advantage, and clearly there's no point in, Dublin were ruthless because they could win the game, but it also showed, hey, we're not just kicking points from the D here anymore, we're going to score goals.
Kerry aren't going for the juggler for goals with that sort of margin against Limerick. It was the perfect sort of match to go for goals and sort of sharpen those instincts, because the game was never going to be a contest, and then you just turn around and see what Dublin are doing. And people talk about Dublin being gone. You think back to the first league match against Armagh, and Howard and Fenton boys were pulling shots wide that you never see it, and people are wondering, was that the way of it moving forward? No chance. There's only one team that can beat Dublin in this All-Ireland race, and it's Kerry. Dublin would beat any other team in Ireland, no problem. So they're in the top two. They're still in the top two. And realistically, are they the favourites? In my eyes, probably yes.
All right, so don't bother with the All-Ireland final. We'll just pull up the sticks after the semi.
The quicker to get a route into the All-Ireland quarter-final without playing in Leinster, the better. Because it was checking there, 12 in a row, win it by 14 points. It's their 7th biggest win on that run of 12. 7th biggest final win. So they won 6 of those 12 by bigger than 14-point margin. It's a ridiculous championship. It's absolutely ridiculous. It's not Dublin's fault. It's very hard to work out what the actual process should be, but it's a shambolic provincial championship.
Yeah,
and,
okay.
And what it wasn't, Pat? It wasn't intriguing one bit.
It wasn't compelling, intriguing, fascinating, or enthralling.
It wasn't a chess match either.
One of those games, the Kerry and the Munster and Leinster finals were one of those games that you hoped that you had it recorded and you've just flicked forward at the end to see what was the final score, because the result was never in doubt.
I hope you have it recorded and you recorded the wrong channel. It was a non-contest.
I had someone contact me on Twitter, Rory, after the game. I don't know why they weren't known to me. They just said, "Now, do you think those two matches?"
They weren't trying to catfish you, Mikey.
No, I don't think so. No, there was no picture. I don't know. They just asked it. Now, do you think the people who are back in the provincial championships will think differently now? And I just said, well, Dublin and Kerry doing this for the last 15 years hasn't changed anyone's mind. So why is it them doing it this year going to change anybody's mind?
The provincial championships, and I'd even include, I know, look, Ulster cling to it, and they were a stumbling block, but they weren't the only ones. But the provincial championships are dead-end entities. We know that. I mean, the calendar and congested fixtures program is too tight and too early. The Ulster final was a dreadful game. The Ulster final was compelling. Irish people and GA supporters have developed a new national pastime, which is effectively whinging and moaning about everything. All of these things are true, and they can all be true at the same time. That's the hilarious thing about it.
You're right about the provincial championship, because we could ridicule them and laugh them off, and yes, you could give a lot of arguments why you could laugh them off. But there's this dream out there. Do you know there's this utopian society out there? Do you know, like, remember the Coca-Cola ad? I'd like to teach the world to sing in perfect harmony, grow apple trees. Yeah. So I don't know. This perfect world doesn't exist. And there's this belief that, if we scrap the provincial championship, we'll have lots of different winners, we'll have lots of different doodle-doo. We will not. The National Football League, which is well formed, the National Football League, the Division 1 teams, it's the same couple of teams that come through the National Football League and win. Kerry are still winning the National Football League for the last 3 years. So irrespective of whether Kerry, Dublin, Galway, whatever like that, were in another provincial or in an open draw, the cream always comes to the top, the same teams. But while we're at it, look, maybe I'm going soft in my old age. Maybe it's because my son is involved with Sligo. But I watched during the league. I watched more Division 4 National League games than I watched Division 1 games. But I will say this, out of the weekend that's just gone by, I'm just saying the Tailteann Cup is starting to be a huge success. It's going to be a huge success. And I just thought, when I saw the Carlow players celebrating after that victory, and you start to say, that's it, that is brilliant. And I was just thinking about it.
When is the last time we saw Leitrim win a championship match on the Sunday game?
Well, do you know what? When you think about Rory, it is a long.
Last time they played New York, maybe whenever that was.
We saw actually Rory. They beat London a couple of weeks ago.
What did they?
It was on Sunday. But let's take Leitrim and Sligo, right? Take Leitrim and Sligo. One of them is going to get to into Tailteann Cup semi-final, right? For Leitrim or Sligo, the winners of that game, it will be their 5th championship game of the year. Their 5th championship game. Go back through the records. When did Leitrim or Sligo ever play 5 championship games in the 1 year? Probably never. Maybe once in a lifetime. Probably never. Not alone that, they'll be playing their 5th championship game, either Limerick. They will be playing it in Croke Park, and they will be playing it live on RTÉ television. And you'll start to say, this is great. And I've looked at all the teams. There's no one has dropped out. They're committing. They're training hard. They're full strength teams. Carlow, who were humiliated in the league, 1 victory against Watford, who were humiliated in the Leinster Championship. The easy option for the Carlow management, Niall Carew and his players, was to say, affect this anyhow. And you know what? They said, look, we'll give it a crack. This is our level. They trained hard, they had challenge games, and yesterday, they mightn't win another game, but yesterday was their moment in the sun. I thought, geez, this Tailteann Cup, it's good.
And Niall Carew was one of the managers who wasn't sugarcoating it after they went out of the championship. He said, I don't know what kind of squad we're going to have. He answered the question honestly, and we were kind of wondering, this mightn't augur well. But clearly, as you say, Pat, they went away and had training session and decided, let's give it a rattle. And it wasn't the biggest shock of all time because they beat a team who were in the same division as them this year, but it was still a good win.
And when you think about it, Mikey, think about it that next weekend, and we talk about attendances at the Munster final, and we talk about the attendance at Croke Park, which was abysmal as well. Think about it, that 2 quarterfinals in the Tailteann Cup next weekend will probably have close to full house at Park Sean in Carrick-on-Shannon, the local derby, Sligo and Leitrim. That's number 1. And at Brewster Park, Cavan and Fermanagh local drive. They'll be close to full house for a quarter-final of a competition which a couple of months ago a lot of teams didn't want. So it's great. It's good. It's a nice positive story to take out of the weekend instead of fucking bashing the provincial championships and whatever.
Yeah, no, and I think it's a good way to finish as well, Pat. So Niall, I was cribbing this morning about it because I was in a bad mood. I hadn't got much sleep, and I was saying Leitrim, Sligo, Fermanagh, Cavan, Carlow, Westmeath. Such novel pairings were being thrown up, but I think I'm just being churlish. And let's be honest, we do have Offaly, New York, which may be a first ever. So it is getting to the point now, exactly as Pat says, the carrot of a televised semi-final in Croke Park. It's not being patronising to say that's a fairly big carrot for all these teams.
Absolutely, and I was at the launch there a couple of weeks ago, and a number of the players had never played at Croke Park, and you're looking out in the pitch, and I was speaking to a few and saying they'd love to just get and play in Croke Park. It's on the bucket list, and it is on the bucket. It's a possibility now for so many of them. And I kept hearing, the GAA aren't promoting this, I don't know how much more they could have done. They've done plenty. There's going to be improvements in the promotional side of things, but Pat's exactly right. For all the promotion and all the whatever press releases, photo calls, seeing the Carlow players fist pumping like crazy, seeing Fermanagh celebrate that late goal and the cheer that went up when Ryan Jones kicked that late score. That's what's going to get people over the line this competition. Seeing that the players actually care about this. The Tommy Murphy Cup, the first ever draw, was a joke. You had 5 teams entered, 1 pulled out. Likes of Cavan are saying, no, we're not going to play because we want to focus on club commitments. You've got a whole raft of teams now that have put their heart into it. They seem to have really said, right, we're going to back this. And they're enjoying it. As alluded to, the matches were crackers over the weekend. Really good contests of good football. Maybe that bit of pressure is off where they can go out and play a bit of football. And it showed. There were some really good matches. London came to Fermanagh a few weeks ago. And just think of the expense, London, to come over and play a challenge match in Fermanagh. That shows the commitment levels. And they very well could have beat Sligo. Sligo, I think, at 18 wides. But what are results?
21 wides.
21. For Tony McEntee, who comes from Crossmaglen, a side legendary for the conversion rates, they kicked 21 wides. He probably never kicked 21 wides in his whole Crossmaglen career. But listen, I thought in terms of, I know it wasn't the first weekend of the competition, but in terms of that weekend there, that was a real starter's gun for it. And I think going forward, I think there's a real future of this competition because already the public opinion on it seems to sway a bit.
And it's what we didn't see in Killarney or in, it's a level playing field, teams of equal ability playing against each other. And you know what? At the end of the day, I always used to preach that to young lads. when you say you've won a county title, does anyone say, was it novice, was it junior, was it intermediate? A county title is a county title. An All-Ireland title is an All-Ireland title. Whether it is Tailteann Cup, under 20, under 16, under 14, whatever like that, an All-Ireland medal is an All-Ireland medal.
It's a mindset that has to be. We have to reverse engineer it, I think, is the thing, Pat. Because actually, this is going to sound like I'm really blowing my own trumpet here, but my sister pulled out some like GA magazine from 20 years ago or more, and there was a picture of our club after winning a minor county title, and I was sure in my head it was a Division 3 county title. It wasn't. It was a Division 2 county title, so it was even better. But as you say, Pat, I didn't care that for 20 years I thought it was a Division 3 title. It was actually Division 2. So I was like, Rory, it is a mindset, but it's very difficult, and this is the problem that GAA have, that we can all see that it's working, and that even a senior, intermediate, junior, 3 tiers could be the way to go, which is what a lot of people think. But there is still that mindset out there that a Cavan player has in his head, I have to have a chance to win Sam Maguire at the start of the year. Do you think there's any chance that we're getting somewhere on kind of softening that attitude?
I think there is, because like the two lads mentioned, like the contests, I think that's the most important thing. Like the teams are having a go as well. I mean, some of the, like, look, I only saw highlights last night, but there was amazing. Did Westmeath go down to 14 men early in the first half and still won? And were they like 7 or 8 points down and down to 14 men, came back to win by 3 in the end?
In goal.
You had like Raymond Gallagher being forced to retake a penalty, and then, as Wheelo said last night, and he comes off his line again, but this time the goal stands. But like there was so much happened in the first weekend for it to kind of really build a narrative, and you'd kind of hope now that you'd hope that maybe the general public will buy into it a little bit more and will actually go and support it. I think Niall is right. I think, look, to a certain extent, it is difficult. It's a difficult competition to get your marketing and promotion on the get-go when you don't actually know who's going to be playing in it until a lot of the provincial championships conclude. To be fair to the GAA on that front. But I think, look, this is the first year. I think it's been a good launch for it now, and I think they will definitely learn some things that worked and some things that didn't. I would be very strong on, please do not go to a round robin. I think the straight knockout element.
It's done, Rory. It's done. It's happening.
To my mind, that is a mistake. I think that is a mistake.
Mikey,
but anyway, I think look, that's for another day. I think there's loads of good aspects to it.
Mikey, before we finish, maybe we're too hard on ourselves in the GA and we beat ourselves up too much. But Big time. I mean, Pat, I really think, Pat. I look at the positive and I say, what should be positive out of the Munster final? Just the class of Kerry's football, the class of Dublin's football, the beauty of Galway's forward play. And yes, the Ulster wasn't a spectacle, but at the same time, the passion, the colour, the joy, the euphoria of this Derry
drama, Pat. It was drama.
Yeah. Yes, the drama. And then you take the Tailteann Cup and all the excitement and the close matches and the extra time in Sligo. And you know what? Is our glass half empty or half full?
But Pat, my glass is half. If you think about it, right? You've got 2 international sports, but billions and billions and billions of euros, pounds, dollars, whatever you want, thrown into it. Their marquee game, which was probably going live to however many billions of people all over Europe and all over the world, delayed because it was so badly organized in terms of people getting in and out of the stadium by up to 40, was it 40 minutes?
36 minutes.
36 minutes before the game kicked off. A total fiasco. And this is UEFA. And then the next day, they didn't manage to finish a Formula 1 Grand Prix because they ran out of light. I think was it
they didn't want to drive in the rain,
or the weather was bad or something. So I do think the GA can be, people within GA circles can be a bit hard on themselves at times, and I think it was a good weekend for football overall. Look, a lot of the negatives are stuff that we all knew in advance anyway, and I don't think we need to be beating ourselves up too much about it anymore.
No. On that unusually positive note,
we're happy.
We'll leave it at that. My future as a tipping pundit is still intact, as is Pat's. Pat, we're going to break away. We'll have our own podcast where we don't ever get a prediction wrong. Until that day, we'll see you on Thursday to preview the weekend's action. Thank you to Pat, to Niall, and to Rory, and we will see you then. Thank you. Good luck.
Crucial from this. How much longer will the referee allow? Dublin lead by a point, and there's the whistle. It's over. It's over.
We earned it by winning the last 2 matches on the road, and that's not going to be taken away from us.
But what I love in hurling, I love players that will never give in.
He hits it. He hits it.